Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 16, Environmental and Ecological Movements. And we start with topic the popular movements. This section discusses some of the forest-based movements, anti-dam movements and movements caused due to the environmental pollution. The forest-based movements discussed here include Chipko and Apico movements. The anti-dam movements includes NBA. The anti-pollution movement include those which took place in Delhi. First is Chipko movement. As mentioned earlier, the origin of modern environmentalism and environmental movements in India can be ascribed to the Chipko movement in the central Himalaya region in the early 1970s. Chipko movement launched a protect the Himalayan forest from destruction, has its root in the pre-independence days. Many struggles were organized to protest against the colonial forest policy during the early decades of 20th century. People's main demand in these protests was that the benefits of the forest, especially the right to fodder, should go to local people. These struggles have continued in the post-independence era as the forest policies of independent India are no different from that of the colonial ones. The origin of Chipko took place during 1973. In the early 1973, the Forest Department refused to allot ash trees to the Dasholi Gram Swaraj Sangh, a local cooperative organization based in Chamoli district, for making agricultural implements. On the other hand, the forest department allotted ash trees to the private company, that is, Simon's company. This incident provoked the DGSS to fight against this injustice through laying down in front of the timber trucks and burning resin and timber depots, as was done in Quit India movement. When these methods were found unsatisfactory, Chandi Prasad Bhatt, one of the leaders, suggested of embracing the trees, and thus Chipko was born. This form of protest was instrumental in driving away the private company from felling the ash trees. With its success, the movement spread to other neighboring areas, and subsequently the movement came to be popularly known as Chipko movement internationally. From its beginning, the Chipko movement concentrated on ecological issues such as depletion of forest cover and soil erosion. Three important aspects were responsible for the success of Chipko movement. First, the close links between the livelihoods of the local people and the nature of the movement. The local people consider Chipko as a fight for basic subsistence which have been denied to them by the institutions and policies of the state. In addition, specificity of the area where Chipko movement took place, involvement of women in contribution to households, subsistence, and the overwhelming support to anti-alcohol campaign have led to the else overwhelming support of women, which is unique to the Chipko movement. The second aspect is with regard to the nature of agitation. Unlike other environmental movements, Chipko has strictly adhered to the Gandhian tradition of freedom struggle, that is, non-violence. Third, the simplicity and sincerity of the leaders like Sundarlal Bahuguna and their access to natural leaders like Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Other politicians and officials also helped to the success of movement to the large extent. The demand of Chipko movements were as complete stoppage of cutting trees for commercial purposes. The traditional rights should be recognized on the basis of minimum needs of the people. Making the arid forest green by increasing people's participation in tree cultivation. Formation of village committees to manage forests. Development of the forest related home based industries and making available the raw materials, money, and technique for it, and giving priority to afforestation in the light of local conditions, requirements, and varieties. What is distinctive about Chipko movement is that it was the forerunner as well as direct inspiration for a series of popular movements in defense of community rights to natural resources. Sometimes these struggles revolved around forests, in other instances around control and use of pasture, minerals, or fish resources. Next is Apico movement. Inspired by the Chipko movement, the villagers of Western Ghats in the Uttar Kannada region of Karnataka started Apico Kalevali movement during September-November 1983. Here the destruction of forest was caused due to commercial felling of trees for timber extraction. Natural forests of the region were felled by the contractors, which resulted in soil erosion and drying up of perennial water resources. In the Sankalani village in Sirsi, the forest dwellers were prevented from collecting unfruct like twigs and dried branches and non-timber forest products for the purpose of fuel wood, fodder, honey, etc. They were denied of their customary rights in these products. In September 1983, women and youth of the region decided to launch a movement similar to Chipko in South India. Women and youth from Saklani and surrounding villages walked 5 miles to a nearby forest and hugged trees there. They forced the fellers and the contractors of the state forest department to stop cutting trees. The people demanded a ban on felling of green trees. The agitation continued for 38 days, and this forced the state government to finally concede to their demands and withdrew the order for felling of trees. For some time, government stopped felling of trees, which was resumed again after some time, which resumed the movement again. The movement was backed by the local people. Even the daily wage laborers hired by the contractors to fell tree stop doing their work. In October, the movement entered into its second phase, and this took place in Bangong forest. Here, the forest was of mixed tropical semi evergreen type and mostly on hilly terrain. The inhabitants of the region, who were primarily tribal or the indigenous people, depending on the forest for their survival and livelihood. Disappearance of bamboo due to commercial felling deprived them of the basic source to make items like baskets, mats, etc. The main source of their income was the sale these items. When felling of trees did not stop, people started the movement. The movement was spontaneous in nature. The local indigenous people hugged a tree to stop them from cutting, and finally the government had to give in to their demands. Similar movements also started in other areas like Hasri. It also inspired the local people to launch the movement. In fact, Apico movement became a symbol of people's power for their rights of natural resources vis-a-vis the state. In November, the movement spread to Nidgod village in Sidhapur Taluka, preventing the state from commercial felling of trees in this delicious forest of the region. The Apico movement was successful in its threefold objectives, that is, protection of the existing forest cover, regeneration of trees in denuded lands, and utilizing forest wealth with proper consideration to conservation of natural resources. The movement also created awareness among the villagers throughout the Western Ghats about the ecological danger posed by the commercial and industrial interest to their forest, which was the main source of sustenance. Like the Chipko, the Apiko movement revived the Gandhian way of protest and mobilization for sustainable society in which there is a balance between men and nature. Next is Narmada Bachao Andolan NBA. Narmada River project encompassing three major states of western India, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, is the most important case study in terms of maturation of environmental movements and the dynamics related to politics of development. No other development project in India has brought into focus the intensity of magnitude of and eco-development problems to such a level of informed debate, political mobilization, and grassroots activism as this project. The controversy which surrounded this project has challenged the government at all levels and at the same time was successful in creating and forging linkages with the civil society organizations and NGOs, both at national and international level. In fact, it has contributed to the political discourse of alternative development in India. Sardar Sarovar project, which is a interstate multi-purpose project with a terminal major dam in Gujarat, is being built on river Narmada, which is the fifth largest river in India 1,312 kilometers long. The Narmada Valley project, with its two mega projects, Sardar Sarovar project and Narmada Sagar project in Madhya Pradesh, is the largest single river valley project with the objective of making the world's largest man-made lake. The consequences of the project are, however, quite glaring and alarming. The reservoir, which submerged 37,000 hectares of land, of which 11,000 hectares are classified as forest. It was displaced about 1 lakh persons of 248 villages, 19 of Gujarat, 36 of Maharashtra, and 193 of Madhya Pradesh. The state government initiated the project as Gujarat was one of the worst water-starved regions in India, and there was drastic shortage of water for domestic, commercial, agricultural, and industrial needs. Further, the state has witnessed one of the worst drought between 1985 to 88, which further reinforced this project. However, according to the critics, it is seen as the world's worst man-made ecological disaster, and it is considered unviable. It may be mentioned here that originally Narmada project was considered to be an irrigation project of a 161 feet high dam. Later it was found that water could be technologically harnessed, making it a multi-purpose dam if its level is raised to 455 feet. Consequently, the state governments started looking for finances not only from the center but also from the World Bank. Plans for damming the river at Ghora in Gujarat surfaced as early as 1946. In fact, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru laid the foundation for a 49.8-meter high dam in 1961. After studying the new maps, the dam planners decided that a much larger dam would be more profitable. The only problem was hammering out an agreement with neighboring states, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. In 1969, after years of negotiation attempting to agree on the feasible water sharing formula, the Indian government established the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal. 10 years later, it announced its award, the Narmada Water Disputes Tribunal Award. The award envisaged that land should be made available to ouster at least a year before submergence. Before the Ministry of Environment even cleared the Narmada Valley Development Project in 1987, the World Bank sanctioned a loan for $450 million for the largest dam, the Sardar Sarovar. In 1985, in actuality, construction on the Sardar Sarovar Dam site had continued sporadically since 1961 but began in the earnest in 1988. Questions arose concerning the promises about resettlement rehabilitation program set up by the government. As a consequence, each state had a people's organization which addressed these concerns. Soon these groups came together to form the Narmada Bachao Andolan (NBA) or the Save the Narmada movement under the leadership Medha Patekar, a social activist. It may be mentioned here that the NBA began as a fight for information about the Narmada Valley Development Project, but developed as a fight for just rehabilitation for the lakhs of people to be outstated by the Sardar Sarovar Dam and other large dams along the Narmada River. Eventually, when it became clear that the magnitude of the project precluded accurate assessment of damages and losses, and that rehabilitation was impossible, the movement challenged the very basis of the project and questioned its claim to development. In 1988, the NBA demanded formally the stoppage of all work on Narmada Valley development projects. In September 1989, more than 50,000 people gathered in the valley from all over India to pledge to fight destructive development. A year later, thousands of villagers walked and boated to a small town in Madhya Pradesh to reiterate their pledge to drown rather than agree to move from their homes. Under intense pressure, the World Bank was forced to create an independent review committee, the Commission. It published its report, the Morse Report, in 1992. The report endorsed all the main concerns raised by the Andolan. 2 months later, the bank sent out the Pamela Cox Committee. It also known as suggested exactly what the Morse report advised against. A sort of patchwork remedy to try and salvage the operation. Eventually, due to the international uproar created by the report, the World Bank withdrew from the Sardar Sarovar project. In response, the Gujarati government decided to raise $200 million and go ahead with the project. Many issues of the project are yet unresolved. However, what is more important is that the movement has been successful a considerable extent. The achievements of the movements include exit of the World Bank from Sardar Sarovar in 1993, halt of Sardar Sarovar construction in 1994 to 1995 to 99, withdrawal of foreign investors from Maheshwar Dam 1999 to 2001. The NBA is unique in the sense that it underlined the importance of people's right to information, which the authorities finally had to concede under media and popular pressure. It was successful not only in mobilizing hundreds of thousands of people from different walks of life to put pressure on the state government for its anti people policies, affecting and displacing lakhs of tribals from their homes and livelihoods. It also received immense international support, resorting to non-violent mode of protest and following Gandhian vision of constructivist work. NBA, as it's popularly known, is distinctive landmark in the history of environmentalism in India. However, in the face of recalcitrant attitude of the governments, the NBA continues with the involvement of affected people and civil society organizations. Next is urban based environmental movements. In the recent past, environmental pollution caused due to industrialization has become the focus of collective action by the civil society organizations, NGOs, concerned individuals, especially lawyers, scientists, environmentalists, and social activists. They sought the intervention of the judiciary and drew the attention of the state for showing concern to the pollution caused by the process of modernization. However, the main focus of the collective action against pollution has been in the urban areas. Certain tragedies like gas leakage in Bhopal based Union Carbide MNC, Chernobyl in former Soviet Union, where thousands of people were killed, created worries among the people on the negative effect of the industrialization. Though the 1990s have seen increased concern about the environmental pollution, awareness about the disastrous impact of the environmental pollution started growing in the 1960s. All the major cities of India are facing acute air, water, and other kinds on environmental pollution. Continuous immigration of the people from rural area into the cities, their habitat in the congested areas which exist along with the polluting small scale industries, increasing number of vehicles and unplanned expansion of cities, open drainage, etc., have created levels environmental hazards. This pollution made people susceptible to multiple diseases. The protection of environment did not form significant part of the policies of the state. The Nehruvian model gave more emphasis to the industrialization without showing much concern for the pollution it was going to create. However, in 1976, a constitutional amendment called upon the state to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country, and made the fundamental duty of every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. In the following decades, the state passed legislation to prevent air pollution and environmental protection, like the Air Act of 1981 and Environmental Protection Act of 1986. The judiciary has become the arbiter of people's rights, which include their protection from the environmental protection also since the emergence of the device of the public interest litigation PIL. In the face of indifference of the executive and legislature about the people's problem, the PIL has become an effective weapon through which the people seek the intervention of the state on these issues. The intervention of the judiciary forced the state to introduce some measures for prevention of environmental pollution. Justice Krishnan Iyer, Justice Kuldeep Singh, and Advocate M.C. Mehta have made remarkable contribution in protection of the environment. Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Three issues related to the environmental pollution have been focus of activities of some concerned of the civil society component in the recent past. These are air pollution caused due to the vehicular and industrial pollution and water pollution in Yamuna River. The number of private and public vehicles has increased manifold in the recent past. It has polluted the environment and made people, especially children and old, vulnerable to multiple diseases. Reacting to the court order, which was a result of a PIL, the government made it compulsory to introduce the CNG vehicles and make the pollution check mandatory for all private vehicles. The introduction of the CNG vehicle has resulted in reduction of the environmental pollution in the city. Similarly, the Delhi government have been forced to shift the polluting industries out of the city and launch the Yamuna river cleaning operation. The closing down of the polluting factories and industries proved the labor unrest in the city. It resulted in the police firing, which killed one laborer. In fact, this is related to the unplanned development policy. The migration to the cities from the village is inevitable unless some measures are adopted to absorb the migrating population and increasing usage of vehicles is stopped. It seems the environmental pollution will remain. Now let us have summary of the unit. To sum up, environmental and ecological movements became prominent in India since the 1970s, like other such movements. The concerns of these movements are not confined to any particular groups. They are all encompassing the entire village and urban communities, women, tribals, peasants, middle classes, and nature. Even the issues raised by them concern all sections of society in varying degrees. These issues are protection of people's right to access of natural resources, prevention of land degradation, preventing commercialization of nature resources and environmental pollution, maintenance of ecological balance, rehabilitation of displaced people, etc. These issues are also related to people's dignity, environmental rights, and their decision making rights on the issues concerning them. The state, in collaboration with the donor agencies, disturbed the ecological balance in the society following independence. In the process, this adversely affected the people. The later launched the environmental and ecological movement with their leadership, NGOs, and other civil society organizations. These movements have raised the levels of people's consciousness and achieved some success. They form a significant aspect of democracy in India. Here we want to wind up this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thank you so much for your attention.